violent threats by one of the lawyers who worked for Project Veritas, saying he wanted to punch me in the face.
I'm not going to read this into the record. It's full of, shall we say, coarse language, and certainly not a communication that is particularly befitting of a member of a bar of this or any court. That person did not cover himself in glory when he wrote that message. I mean, my goodness.
Decapitating me and carving out my heart and eating it with a spoon. This is some of the most demonic stuff you can ever hear. And again, this was from a board member.
And we have two witnesses now in their depositions under sworn testimony, confirming that Matt Tiermond openly stated in Project Veritas headquarters he wanted to decapitate James O'Keefe and carve his heart out and eat it with a spoon.
Disturbing nature of that remark, which is atrocious. I don't know why anybody would say that about anybody else. I'm sorry that you've endured that, Mr. O'Keefe. Honestly, that's not appropriate either.
An update on the Project Veritas situation. As I reported earlier, we were in talks to regain control of Project Veritas. We released part one of a film called The Truth Inside Veritas, showing business entanglements of the board members. One board member saying that they had companies like Petrogen, which could be sold to a big pharma like Pfizer, who we were investigating at the time.
Petrogen could be sold to a big pharma.
Like Pfizer.
Objection.
Now, more board members are going to be deposed, and Project Veritas has asked a federal judge to put a stay on the discovery effort, meaning to put a hold on my ability to depose the other board members. Project Veritas said it was concerning I was publishing parts of these depositions and that people are receiving death threats. Now we take you inside the federal courthouse in New York. Because cameras aren't allowed in the courthouse, we'll read the judge and attorney's words and take you through what happened, some of which we think is highly unusual and extraordinary. This includes a police report, a mysterious federal investigation, allegations that I'm intimidating witnesses merely by being present, and violent threats by one of the lawyers who worked for Project Veritas. You can't make any of this up. First, the federal judge noted this was a public proceeding.
As a general matter, this is a public proceeding. It's an open court, and generally, things that are discussed in the courtroom are not subject to sealing. There could be some very, very limited exemptions to that, but I just want to note that at the outset. So if you wind up raising anything that you may think that you could apply retroactively to have sealed, those applications are generally looked at disfavorably. So I'm not prejudging anything. There may be some unique characteristic or circumstance here that would lend itself to an appropriate application along those lines, but it's generally unlikely that I would seal anything that has taken place here in open court.
Sure. Thank you, Your Honor. So our position is, as you noted, that we would like to request a stay of discovery in this case. This discovery material is being used doesn't seem designed to further this allegation. It seems designed to humiliate and intimidate witnesses, including by posting incorrect information about these witnesses, which has now caused people to, first of all, receive death threats of rape. And that's one. Part of the reason for the request to seal the courtroom is because I understand that that's currently the subject of an ongoing federal investigation. Beyond that, I have here, and I'm happy to share it with you, Your Honor, and my opposing counsel, a police report that has been filed by one of the witnesses that has already testified in this case, and who may be a witness in trial attesting to the fact that Mr. O'Keefe showed up at his office and his home uninvited.
Regarding that police report, their lawyer was referencing us talking to George Skakel in Connecticut. It was filed just in case they wanted a protective order. Here, in this case, the judge pointed that out.
All right, I will just note, the last sentence of this narrative said that, according to the officer who took the report, it says that Mr. Skakel stated that he just wanted the incident documented in case he goes to apply for a protective order against Mr. O'Keefe. It was approximately 2 months ago.
The point of the Skakel interaction that seemed to really shock everybody was Skakel telling me I can't afford his house. Is it all about money?
Too bad you can't afford that.
After I asked him about his statement, the company Petrogen could be sold to a big pharma like Pfizer. Matthew Tiermond, who is working on behalf of a mysterious Wall Street investment company called Bradley Woods, was, unbeknownst to me, raising money for a number of companies and soliciting the current board members without disclosing that, even though Matthew Tiermond signed a conflict of interest statement with the board of directors of Project Veritas. What's also interesting about the George Skakel interaction is it was actually fairly cordial.
Hey, James O'Keefe,
how are you doing? Hi.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. We actually shook hands when I walked up to him. Then the attorney for Project Veritas actually suggested a prohibition on my reporting on the proceeding. The Project Veritas lawyer actually says that my mere presence in the room with the witnesses has the effect of, quote, intimidating witnesses. Now remember, this lawsuit was filed against me. I filed a counterclaim, and now they're claiming that I'm intimidating them by merely showing up.
We would ask the depositions proceed remotely so that individuals do not have to appear in person.
And, okay, you mentioned that in your letter, and what would be the reason for that?
Well, Mr. O'Keefe,
What would that help to accomplish, in your view?
Mr. O'Keefe typically attends the depositions, so I think his very presence there is, for these individuals who are seeing all of this play out, I think has an intimidating effect. Beyond that, part of what we've been seeing here is that, and I think that the videos kind of bring this out, is that these videos are not, much as they may say they are intended for use at trial, they're being used in a way outside of the courtroom to embarrass and humiliate people. The very need to appear in person in a deposition room where Mr. O'Keefe is also present would cause issues with what's going on.
It's one of the great ironies of my life that my reporting on the quotes from the people's mouths in a courtroom is, quote, embarrassing and humiliating them, unquote. Now, if they're embarrassed and humiliated by what they're doing and saying, going out into the public, well, maybe they should not engage in that behavior in the first place. The solution is not to seal up a public proceeding. The federal magistrate judge here even said he's limited by the Constitution and reality in trying to change that. We actually had a rule at Project Veritas, the 12 jurors rule, that stated behave and talk like there are 12 jurors always watching. Now, for me to see a lawyer from my own creation litigate against that rule and the First Amendment itself, well, that's richer than dark chocolate.
Okay, so one,
It would have the effect of intimidating.
I'm just trying to actually understand exactly what you're asking for. So one would be to require the depositions to take place remotely.
Yes.
And are you asking that the court prohibit Mr. O'Keefe from attending the depositions by video?
So their attorney wanted to stop me from appearing in court alongside the witnesses.
We ask that the depositions proceed remotely so that individuals do not have to appear in person.
So you're not making any application that the deposition materials not be shared publicly, as long as there's no violation of the protective order?
Your Honor, if we could make that request, if Your Honor were inclined to grant it, we would certainly welcome it.
Well, I'm not inclined to grant it.
Right, and that's perhaps why we didn't ask for it.
Well, I appreciate that, but I'm asking you to ask whatever you want to ask for. Look, I appreciate that because, I would say in all the cases that I litigated as an attorney and all the cases that I've presided over as a judge, I can probably count on one hand out of those hundreds, if not at this point thousands of cases where the parties were interested in sharing the deposition transcripts with anybody. And that's because only a small fraction of those cases would there have been any interest by any member of the public in the contents of those depositions.
The judge said that he had read about our story, The Truth Inside Veritas, including the 7,000-word article that appears on our website.
I imagine that one thing you will say to me here, Mr. Whitney, is that no one is attempting to intimidate anybody. Nobody's attempting to harass anybody. That's not the purpose of any of these attempted interviews. That's not the purpose of Mr. O'Keefe posting various things on his websites. It's not the purpose of the video, the movie about, I forget exactly what it's called, Mr. O'Keefe, but the Project Veritas. The Truth About Project Veritas, a docu-series, The Truth Inside of Veritas. I read that article in preparation for today's proceeding.
Then things turned to my attorney.
All right, so we agree that folks should not be subject to this vitriol. Mr. O'Keefe has been subject to and we have two witnesses now in their depositions under sworn testimony confirming that Matt Tiermond openly stated in Project Veritas headquarters he wanted to decapitate James O'Keefe and carve his heart out and eat it with a spoon.
And again, I'm not saying this to minimize the severity and disturbing nature of that remark, which is atrocious. I don't know why anybody would say that about anybody else, but that really has nothing to do with this litigation, right? And I'm sorry that you've endured that, Mr. O'Keefe. Honestly, that's not appropriate either, and that's not a one-way street, apparently.
That's right, decapitating me and carving out my heart and eating it with a spoon. This is some of the most demonic stuff you can ever hear. And again, this was from a board member, but it gets worse. We showed an exhibit of an attorney who worked for and with Project Veritas, sent directly to me, saying he wanted to punch me in the face, talking about my penis, and making stuff up about steroids and drugs.
I'll answer. An email Mr. O'Keefe received from Project Veritas, then Project Veritas attorney Paul Calley, threatening Mr. O'Keefe with physical violence.
And your representation is this is an email from Mr. Calley. Was Mr. Calley an attorney for Project Veritas in this case?
He was once upon a time counsel for Project Veritas.
Okay, I'm not going to read this into the record. It's full of, shall we say, coarse language, and certainly not a communication that is particularly befitting of a member of a bar of this or any court. But it is noted as a hostile, to say the least, and aggressive message from this individual, who you say was Project Veritas's former counsel, directed at Mr. O'Keefe. I mean, it's not, that person did not cover himself in glory when he wrote that message. I mean, my goodness.
Yes, we have further examples, but I think the court gets the point.
Then the judge turned to the issue in this hearing, which is whether he should put a stay on discovery.
My powers of restraint are limited, both by the Constitution and by reality, that I can't stop this member of the public who has some very strong feelings about this dispute from picking up the phone or picking up, his or her phone to send a text message or whatever it might be.
There's that Constitution and reality remark. Again, one of the great ironies is seeing my own creation, Project Veritas, fighting against and litigating against both the Constitution and reality, and asking this federal judge to stop someone who is advocating for those two things. All of this is just sublime.
Mr. O'Keefe and OMG have an ethical obligation to seek comment on these stories that they're releasing. And so that was the goal of visiting Mr. Skakel's home and trying to reach Mr. Strack, who both appear in the documentary, and their deposition expert. Excerpts appear as well, but nonetheless, Mr. O'Keefe agrees not to appear at deponents' homes, personally seeking comment, although he still would like to have, and reserves the right to have, OMG as an organization reach out to these witnesses and call them and seek comment on the stories that will be released.
This is not a critique of your style of journalism, Mr. O'Keefe. It's just an observation, because a lot of journalism conducted over the phone or by video conference, not in person, in a direct face-to-face style. Some journalism is conducted that way, but again, there are ways of seeking comment that don't involve going to somebody's house, you or anybody else for that matter. So the idea of seeking comment, I certainly am not going to sit here and say you can't do that. Mr. Harris, I'm not going to stop OMG from reporting on this case or on the depositions, but I think that does go a long way to addressing the immediacy of the concern about intimidation or physical invasion of privacy or something to that effect.
I agree, Your Honor, and we would not ask that Your Honor interfere with his ability to report.
Now then, the Project Veritas lawyer, Michael J. Harris, states he intends to take my deposition. That will be interesting.
No, and perhaps this is better reserved for later, but just in the event that Your Honor is not inclined to grant the stay and allows the extension of discovery, I want to reiterate that we are going to take Mr. O'Keefe's deposition.
I am going to deny the application for a stay. I am going to deny the request that the depositions automatically take place remotely. If OMG is going to seek comment on any of the deposition testimony, they will use other means of communication, phone, mail, email, whatever else. Whatever else doesn't involve showing up unannounced at some person's location. And just to be clear, that agreement doesn't mean that Mr. O'Keefe could not interview with someone in person if they agree to be interviewed in person. As far as the questions of whether Mr. O'Keefe can attend the depositions,
we would want to reserve the right he attend in person. And the reason for that is not just to stare at the person across the table and attempt to intimidate them, but it's because Mr. O'Keefe lived this. And so he's feeding me documents and questions and responding in real time. And I think we would work much more productively if we were in the same room than if I have to call him on breaks. So
I'm not going to order that Mr. O'Keefe be barred from attending the depositions. You'd have to really make a proper showing, Mr. Harris. It can't just be the witness doesn't feel like seeing Mr. O'Keefe. There would have to be more of a showing in order for that to be compelling.
The judge then brought up the fact that we are asking to depose Paul Calley.
I see now that Paul Calley, Esquire, is actually listed as a witness on this ECF number 153. That seems like it's going to be an issue, because of all the usual reasons why deposing an attorney is an issue, so something tells me we'll be back here to talk about that. Where is Mr. Calley located? Do we know?
Miami, Florida, to our knowledge.
Okay, well, I have a lot of friends in the Southern District of Florida, so I guess maybe I'll be hearing from one of them at some point, okay? I knew that name sounded familiar, but I didn't think he was one of the attorneys on this case. Okay, now I see why it sounded familiar. We're not going to schedule another proceeding just yet. We're going to get the update on June 17th, and then we'll set another status report or status conference date from there. Alright? And make sure you get the appropriate form so you can order the transcript of today's proceeding. Alright? Take care.
They're really trying to stop something so fundamental that it's going to be fascinating to see what they say in front of a judge or a jury. We're going to continue to report on all of these court proceedings. There'll probably be updates either once a month or every couple weeks. Stay tuned with the developments with Project Veritas.